we meet Matthew, whose wife, Claire, has cancer as the movie starts. Medically, it is not possible to treat her because the cancer has spread to her entire body. Claire knew this very well, so she stopped getting herself treated, even from taking her blood sample. But then, because of Matthew's insistence, she has to give her blood sample to her nurse. As soon as the nurse leaves after giving the blood sample, Matthew's cousin puts him on the hook. And here, Matthew steals his wife's blood sample from her. We will find out the reason behind all this later. After the nurse leaves, when Matthew's cousin asks him why he did this, then Matthew also just tells him that I have found a new way to cure Claire. It was obvious that he had stolen the blood, so he was going to do some ritual. He now goes to the bar and meets a man named L, who is going to tell him a ritual to cure Claire. These people bring a very heavy sack to their home. L says, keep it in a place where no one can enter. So Matthew puts it in the basement. He tells Appendix to take a candle. After lighting the candle, put Claire's blood in this sack. Then make a wish. Remember that after making a wish, you don't have to look at this sack or touch it. Remember that you don't even have to go to the room in which this sack is. You just have to take a reverse step and come back from there. And then this sack will show its magic. Remember that you don't have to talk to this sack at all. Matthew says, I'm crazy, why would I talk to it? L says in reply, you will know this thing slowly. There may be some messy things in your house for 3 days. You have to tolerate those things, and after 3 days all your problems will be over. That man leaves Matthew's house. At night, we see that Matthew has come to the basement to do the same ritual. According to L, he lit a candle, put his wife Claire's blood in that sack, and after making a wish, he took a reverse step and came back. But here, by mistake, while closing the door, his lighter falls into this room. To pick it up, Matthew had to open the door of this room. And in this way, Matthew broke a rule of the ritual. Because now his eyes were on the sack as well. The sack that was moving, there must have been some energy or entity in it. Anyway, while ignoring all these things, he comes out of here. We see that Matthew had also made a studio for Claire. Both of them were singers. Matthew wanted both of them to sing their songs here. But maybe Claire died without seeing this studio. He was talking to his cousin that all of a sudden he hears Claire's voice. He runs to the room and sees that Claire was sleeping. No, this was his delusion. Now the next day, when he starts cooking, he hears the voice of a woman again. Hearing this voice on his mobile radio, this time he was very scared. Even at night, his sleep suddenly opens. He was still hearing someone's voice. And now this voice was very clear. It felt like Claire was saying, I don't know why I got cancer. Matthew should have had cancer. And after hearing this, Matthew gets angry that how much effort he is making for Claire. And Claire is talking like this. In anger, he goes to Claire's room and sees that Claire was sleeping. He didn't say anything like that. He understood that the sack that he had brought in the basement, maybe with the power inside him, she is doing all this. Anyway, the next day it is shown that Matthew's cousin comes to him again. These people start playing golf here. And by mistake, their ball goes to the same room in the basement, where no one was allowed to go. When Matthew's cousin starts going to get the ball, he stops Matthew and forbids him from playing. Matthew's cousin found this very strange. That's why after Matthew leaves, he opens that room. Not only did he open this room, he also saw that sack. Many of the rules of such rituals were broken. And it was possible that the ritual would reverse now. When this boy goes and asks Matthew about that sack, Matthew starts getting angry at him. Why did you open that room? You shouldn't have gone there. Despite being angry, Matthew doesn't tell that man anything. He just says that I want to cure my wife. Anyway, time goes by. And strange things happen to Matthew, as if it had become routine now. He used to hear strange voices. Strange calls used to come. He even started seeing a girl who had a black mark on her hand. He started getting scared of these things. One day, Matthew receives a parcel. Claire had ordered this parcel for herself. As soon as Matthew opens this parcel, his wife Claire's body comes out of it. Seeing this, he gets very scared and throws this box away. Hearing her scream, Claire also comes out of the wheelchair. She picks up the box and shows that it only had the wig she had ordered. Things were getting very dangerous. Now, even with his condition, Matthew used to get very scared. He tries to contact Elle about all these things. But Elle doesn't receive his phone. He didn't even know Elle's address, that he should go and meet him. Then, the next day, we are shown that Claire's health was improving a lot. as if that ritual was working for him. He himself sits on the wheelchair and comes to the kitchen. Seeing this, Matthew becomes very happy. Matthew now turns towards the stove and starts cooking. Suddenly, someone puts their hand on his shoulder. At first, Matthew thought that it was Claire. But as soon as he looked at her hand, it was a dark and scary hand that scared him. He realized that the person behind him, his wife, was actually not Claire, but an entity. Seeing this, he angrily tells the entity to leave. When he turned around, he saw that his wife Claire was still sitting on the wheelchair. She didn't know anything about this ritual. She thinks that Matthew scolded her and disrespected her and asked her to leave. That's why she gets angry and leaves. Claire took the shock of this thing on herself. At night, she cuts her nerves. As soon as Matthew sees this, he immediately calls the doctor. But the call is made by an entity from the other side, and tells him that you did all this. You killed your wife, Claire. Suddenly, the knife comes into Matthew's hand, and Matthew comes to his senses. He realizes that all this was a dream. The next day, when Matthew was sleeping in his room, Claire walked up to him and came to him. Seeing this, he was very happy. She was getting better than before. She came and lay down next to Matthew. After a while, she saw him here. After that, Claire went to the washroom. As soon as she went to the washroom, Matthew got a call. The call was from Claire on the other side. And after knowing this, he came to his senses. Because the entity that was lying next to him was not Claire. Instead, there was an entity in Claire's face. He runs to see Claire in the room. Claire was really in his room. Afraid, he comes out of this room. Now he sees the same entity, which he has seen many times before. There is always a black mark on his hand. Afraid of this entity, Matthew does not know, when he went to the same room in the basement, where he was supposed to go. Now his eyes are on that sack too. Afraid, the torch falls from his hand. And a hand comes out of the sack and picks up the torch. Afraid of seeing this, Matthew says, go away, Basant. And that hand also went inside as if it was listening to him. Matthew had also locked the door of this room. But still, he could clearly hear the voices. Please let me out of here. He comes back to Claire's room. He sees that Claire was not there. Looking for her, he comes to the studio, where Claire was very happy to see her studio. He wanted to tell Claire everything. He tells her that Claire, I have joined a cult to cure you. You will be completely cured. This ritual will make you the way you were before. I just have to pay a price for this ritual. Claire asks, what price? Matthew says, I don't know that. But yes, I have to pay a price. Now they were talking that, in such a long time, Matthew gets a call from Claire's nurse, who was asking about Claire's health. Matthew tells her that Claire has already been completely cured. And the nurse was shocked to hear this news, because she had called to tell that Claire does not have more than 2 days. Stay with her as much as possible, and accept this reality. While Matthew was talking to the nurse, Claire now goes to the basement room. Seeing this bag, Claire's condition was getting worse. And suddenly, she also became unconscious. Matthew had also come to Claire at the right time. He quickly picks up Claire and takes her to her room. Her condition had deteriorated a lot, and he could not see Claire like this. He thinks it's enough. He now wanted to pick up this bag and throw it out of the house, because he was not able to tolerate all this anymore. But now this bag was much heavier than before, so it was not coming out of his house. He calls Al here, but Al does not receive the call. Then he drops a message to Al, that he is throwing that bag. By doing this, he broke another rule of ritual, that he touched this bag. After doing all this, when Matthew sits on the laptop to do his work, then suddenly, scary pictures start appearing on his laptop. These were all Claire's test reports. Seeing which, he got scared. Before he would have gone completely crazy. Now he decides that somehow he will find Al. He now goes to the bar where he met Al for the first time. The girl working in the bar was Matthew's friend. Through the data there, he finds out about Al's house. Without knowing that he goes to Al's house. When he knocks on the door, this door suddenly opens. Matthew was very shocked, because she was the same girl who he used to see again and again at his house, who had a black mark on his hand all the time. This girl was very strange. After talking to her, Matthew found out that she is Al's daughter. Now she calls Al. When Al comes here, his daughter tells Al to make him understand. Make him understand that he will have to accept everything. Hearing this strange thing, Matthew stands up from the chair. And Al, the girl's father, keeps explaining to him. Okay, I'll explain. You go from here. Now Al comes to Matthew and asks him, did you break any of the rituals? When Matthew doesn't say anything here, Al says to him, look, there are a lot of entities involved in this ritual. And they will scare you. I told you this before. You should get used to those screams now. Look, now you have to endure something even bigger than this. He says to Matthew, why don't you talk clearly? On which Al now tells him the story of that sack. Actually, the entity in that sack doesn't do anything to anyone. She just gives her replacement. To make him understand, Al tells him, the daughter you see here is not my daughter. My daughter is dead and she lives with someone else. The same will happen to you now and you should accept this truth. If that entity didn't fulfill his wish just like that entity didn't sacrifice his wish to fulfill his wish. Just like Al wanted to correct his daughter. And that entity killed his daughter. And gave him his replacement here. Similarly, this entity was going to do the same with Matthew. That is, she was not treating Claire. In fact, she killed Claire. And instead of Claire, someone else would live with Matthew. Matthew asks Al, then where is your daughter's body? Al takes him to the basement, where he sees that Al's daughter was urinating. That too black. His face was very scary. Afraid, Matthew goes back to his house from there. As soon as he reached home, he saw his cousin at the door. He took him and went inside immediately. He tells his cousin that I am taking Claire to the hospital. Before they could do anything, it was too late. Claire was already dead. Her death breaks Matthew badly. 4 hours. He sits here and doesn't feel well. His cousin felt very bad for him. Crying, Matthew suddenly got up and said to his cousin, come on, help me. This girl didn't understand what Matthew wanted to do. He took the bag with his cousin and came to this room. After bringing the bag here, Matthew puts Claire's ashes in this bag. The same cousin felt that Matthew was deeply shocked. That's why he is doing this. After putting Claire's ashes in this bag, Matthew closes it. And Matthew's cousin brings him out of this room and locks the room. Because he thought that Matthew would do something bad with this body. Now he warns Matthew, don't you dare go to this room. I will go there myself and bring Claire's dead body out. As soon as he went inside the room, it was shown that a terrifying entity came out of that bag. He kills this man with his big hands. In a bad condition, Matthew's cousin comes out of the room. Seeing this, Matthew was also shocked. Then he is shown the terrifying hand of the entity. And suddenly the entity attacks him. Here, we can't see the entity completely. But it is shown that the entity is vomiting in Matthew's mouth. And the scene ends here. At this time, a nurse came to Matthew's house to see Claire's health. Matthew opens the door. And we are surprised to see that Matthew was absolutely fine. The entity that was vomiting on him now. He didn't have any such symptoms. He does the same with this nurse. As soon as nothing happens here. As soon as Claire is alive. He comes inside with the nurse. And when the nurse asks him about Claire, he tells her to go and see her in the room. Matthew did all this on purpose. Matthew knew that there was an entity in Claire's room. And as soon as this nurse leaves, that entity kills this nurse. And then he picks it up and puts it in the bag. In return for this nurse's sacrifice, that entity revives Claire. Actually, he didn't revive Claire. He just revived Claire's body. And there was some other entity in his body at this time, which was going to live with Matthew for the rest of his life. Now, a part of this ritual, which Matthew still had to complete. After fulfilling his wish, he had to give this bag to someone else, just like and gave it to him. For this, he meets a friend in the bar. His mom was very sick. He persuades this girl to do a ritual. And your mom will be fine with it. Why wouldn't that girl listen to him? There was evidence in front of her that Matthew's sick wife used to come to the bar with him. She used to dance with him. She was completely fine. Although she doesn't know the truth about Claire. After listening to Matthew, she takes this bag to her house. Matthew's whole purpose is fulfilled. And with this movie story ends here. Thanks for watching.